Good evening, everyone. Tonight is the 12th of October, and it's going on 8 o'clock here. I'm preparing this for the 13th, tomorrow, Thursday morning. I want to talk about something tonight that I'm sure a lot of people have, tried to dispute over time, especially those that are in the upper echelons of the educational system, But those of us who believe the Bible, we have to say either it's true or it's not true. And I'm going to point to some of those things. Okay. Now, I've talked about this over the years before, but, you can start in Genesis and you can start seeing things that happen that are beyond the realm of rational explanation. Okay. We can just mention a few of them, like, for an example, whenever Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were thrown in a fiery furnace. Okay. There are a lot of people that say, well, that can't be true, because if they had been thrown in a fiery furnace, they would have been burned up. Because that fiery furnace was heated 7 times hotter than usual. And I have a number of family members that recently have been cremated. And how do they cremate them? They put them in a fiery furnace. My dad was put in a fiery furnace. My Aunt Wanda, my Aunt Faye, and my Aunt Velma, they were all put in a fiery furnace, and none of them lived. None of them lived. They were cremated. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, if they'd been put in a fiery furnace, they would have been cremated. It says that they looked out in the fiery furnace and they saw this fourth man walking around down there, and that he was likened to the Son of God. Now that people say that can't be real. That can't be real. And the same thing with, if you take a pride of lions and you don't feed them for 3 or 4 or 5 days, and they're about starving, and you throw Daniel in the middle of the lion's den, he is not going to live. I guarantee you, he is going to be eaten up immediately. So that can't be true, right? It can't be true. Says that the lions, he shut their lion's mouth. Yeah, right. As people say, you actually believe that they would throw Daniel in the... They threw these people to the beast. That's the way they got rid of them. And so how did Daniel live? Okay. And then we have other examples of, like, for an example, Moses struck the rock and water started coming out of the rock. Think about it. There was no waterfalls. It wasn't that he walked up into Niagara Falls and there was water coming out of the rocks. No, he went up this rock and he struck it with his rod, and all of a sudden water starts coming. Yeah, right. Right. And so the mockers, the scoffers say, yeah, right. That didn't happen. Okay. All right. Well, now we can jump over to the New Testament. Well, we can also talk about Jonah and the whale. People say, do you actually believe that Jonah was 3 days? How did he breathe inside a big fish like that? How could he have breathed? He would have suffocated inside the big fish's belly. You actually believe that this Jonah was in this whale's belly for 3 days and 3 nights? and then he got vomited up and he lived. And there's so many other things that we could mention, and you know, people say, how in the world could Absalom be riding through the forest and get caught by his hair and hung up by his hair? That's ridiculous. Hung up by his hair like that. And then you jump over the New Testament and you hear, people say the biggest lie, they say, the biggest lie is that Mary got conceived of the Holy Ghost. She did not have sex, and she had a baby without having any sex with a man. Come on. That cannot happen. How can a woman get pregnant by not having sex? And then this turning water into wine. I mean, look, a lot of people own grapes. And have you ever had grape juice that you just, you leave it in the refrigerator a little bit too long and it ferments, right? And it turns into wine. Actually, Christ, they said, took water. It didn't have any grapes in it, none. And he turned it into wine. Yeah, right. That's what the scoffers say. Yeah, right. I can see that happening. And there are a lot of people say that, there's no way that any person can raise another person up from the dead. There's no way. That's impossible. That's scientifically impossible to raise somebody up once they die from the dead by just saying, Lazarus, come forth. And this dead person comes up out of the grave and walks up out of the grave. Come on. Do you actually believe that? They'll say. You actually believe that? And by the way, have you ever met someone that could take and put mud on somebody's eyes? This person's blind, okay? You're going to take and put mud on their eyes, pasty mud, and give them back their eyesight. Come on. That cannot be. That's scientifically impossible. And to touch somebody with a withered hand, that their hand's all withered up and shriveled up, and you touch it, and all of a sudden, wow, look at that, man, the hand's coming back normal. These scoffers say, yeah, right, I believe that too. If you believe that, I got some property in Florida I'll sell you for, a song, Well, I mean, these are some of the things that people say they're scientifically impossible that have happened. I mean, people had a doctor tell me one time Christ didn't actually die. He didn't raise from the dead. He never died. They said he swooned. He just swooned. He didn't actually die. He just went to sleep, and he woke up. He didn't raise up from the dead. That's what a doctor told me one time. Well, then the New Testament says that they were outside Bethany and they looked up and Christ just started floating up into the sky. There he goes. That's scientifically impossible. How would Christ just fly? I can fly, I can fly, I can fly. The scientists say that's an impossibility. Christ did not just go up into the clouds. Well, 500 people witnessed it. Well, the disciples, they did some pretty unscientific things themselves. Here a guy comes through town in a chariot, and this guy's brought up into the chariot and explains the 53rd chapter of Isaiah to this Ethiopian, and then he finds himself out of the chariot in another place. That's scientifically impossible. It talks about Christ, you know, it says he was amongst them, and then all of a sudden he just disappeared in thin air. He disappeared out of this. He's there and he just disappears. Yeah, right. It's no wonder Thomas Jefferson took all the miracles out. No wonder he took the virgin birth down. No wonder he wrote his own Bible called the Jeffersonian Bible, because he couldn't handle the miracles that were relayed in the Bible. It did not make any rational. This is called rationalization. If you can't rationalize it, it can't be true. Well, how could it be true that the creator of the universe, the one who said he created the universe, came down to this earth in the form of a baby? The creator of the universe is put in a stable in a manger. The creator of the universe that created everything is a baby now, a little baby. And comes on the scene without his mother even having sex with a man. You say, well, why are you bringing all this up? Because if you believe that God can do these miracles, then you can believe that God can do other things too. By his choice. By his choice. You know. God's the one that makes the choice as to what he does, not man. You know. And so we either believe in miracles, we either believe all these things I've just talked about, or we don't believe it. But yet science wants us to believe all kind of lies, like they have a space station out there in the middle of nowhere space, traveling through 17,000 miles an hour. You know, man can do things that, you know, do you see what they've done? They've replaced the God of the Bible with the man of science, they say, so-called. Well, that's what's on my mind. But we either believe the Bible or we don't. That's my point. We either believe all these miracles or we don't believe them at all. God bless.